I'm Bobbie Wygant and happy to be with you for this occasion. We're going to have a lot of fun today. I'll tell you a little bit about my background. I have a broadcasting degree from Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana. And my husband also was graduated from Purdue, one semester ahead of me. He came to Fort Worth, Texas with a friend to help his friend drive the car back to Texas. And while he was there, he got a job at, of all places, WBAP radio. Then we were married, and 2 days later, we were married on a Saturday, and 2 days later, I was in Fort Worth, Texas, brand new Texan. Then WBAP was going into television, and my husband transitioned to the TV setup because he had theatrical lighting experience, so he was made the lighting director. And one day he passed the manager in the hall who wanted to know if Bobbie wanted a job. Phil said yes. I ended up going to work 2 weeks before WBAP TV went on the air, initially as a writer. But in those days, everybody was doing everything. And I found myself on the air doing TV programs, kind of assisting Frank Mills and others who were hosting game shows, whatever, to fill the time. And I like to say I was Vanna White before there was a Vanna White. In 1960, they started a daytime program called Dateline, and I became the hostess of that program. And we did a little bit of everything. As I always said, if it isn't illegal or immoral, we'll do it. I was the producer of the show. Any writing that had to be done, whatever had to be done concerning that show, I was doing it. But it was wonderful. I thoroughly enjoyed it. The film companies started sending out stars to promote movies because they found that TV was really effective in selling movies. So that's how I started building up this backlog of interviewing stars. My favorite celebrity interview was Bob Hope, but then I interviewed Bob so many times. He used to say, "Bobbie, you have enough stuff on me to do a 52-week series." But the first time I interviewed Bob, of course, I was very, very excited. I was a big Bob Hope fan from the word go. We were at the SMU Coliseum, and we were sitting on the edge of the stage during one of the breaks, and he was trying to get my name straight, and he was confused because Phil was there as promotion director, and I said, "Bob, my last name is Wygant. That is my married name and my professional name." I said, "Nobody would choose Wygant for a professional name otherwise." And he said, "That's all right, honey." He said, "If I can make it with this nose, you can make it with that name." Another person I enjoyed interviewing, I never knew what was going to happen, but that was okay. He was fun to talk with, was Bruce Willis. When he did the movie Armageddon, I was there in Los Angeles to interview him. And, these are quickie little interviews, 4 or 5 minutes. I started out by saying, "You have been in every paper, magazine I pick up, you and your 3 girls." And I said, playing the father role. And he said, "I know, Bobbie, I know." He said, "It's not like the old days when you used to come up to the canyon and we used to dance naked all night." I thought, "Oh, whoa, 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 whoa." I said, "That was some other Bobbie." And he just carried it on, So finally, the room producer was giving us "You're out of time." I said, "Okay." I said, "Bruce, here you are. You've wasted all my time, and we haven't even talked about Armageddon." So he turns to the room producer and he says, turn off the clock. I'll tell her when she leaves." And he said, "Now, what do you want to ask me about the movie?" So, okay, we do the movie. Now there's a lunch break. I go in to introduce to interview the director of the movie. And right after lunch, and we're getting ready and mic'd and everything. And just as we're starting, Bruce sneaks into the room, gets down by the director, and leans into his microphone. He says, "Do you know something?" He said, "Bobbie used to come up to the canyon, and we used to dance naked all night." One of my biggest events to cover was when the Beatles came to Dallas in 1964. Oh, so excited. But not just any press person could come. You were interviewed ahead of time, several weeks ahead of time, to get press credentials, and because space was somewhat limited. Anyway, I go the day of the press conference, and their manager comes out, and he gives us our instructions. You know, the Brits, everything is in order. So he said, when you want to ask a question, you'll raise your hand. When you're acknowledged, then please stand and give your name and your affiliation. So about halfway through, I thought I better get into this before they call it off. And I raised my hand. I was acknowledged. I stood up, and I started to say my name. And in unison, the four lads said, "Oh, we saw you on the telly today." And so that got us off to a good start. My question to them was, you guys are a phenomenon in show business, but when you made your first big money, what did you indulge yourself with? And each one of them, it was an automobile. And one was a Rolls Royce, and I don't know, Lamborghinis, and they all kind of answered at one time. But it was an automobile, each one of them. That was their first big gift to themselves. So when the press conference was over, I wanted to go up to their manager and say to him, "Thank you so much for allowing me to participate in this." And so he said, "Well, you're staying for the show." And I said, I don't have a ticket. And he said, "Well, then you'll just stay with me." So Brian Epstein and I stood at the foot of the stage all during that Beatle concert. And it was one of the big thrills of my life. I would have to say the most challenging thing in my whole career was November the 22nd, 1963. That was my 37th birthday. And I had a program that day, but they told me, they said, "Bobbie, the motorcade is supposed to get to the Dallas Trade Mart maybe during your program. If it happens during your time, between 12:30 and 1, we will cut immediately to the Trade Mart for President Kennedy." So I barely got into the program. I was interviewing Ray McKinley, the band leader, who was from Fort Worth originally and was in town that night to play at the Fort Worth Casino. And so I noticed my stage manager, Ed Milner, was doing all kinds of pressing the ear set in, and I thought, "What's the matter with Ed?" And then all of a sudden he put his hands up like that, which is no standard signal for on-air people to know what. But at the same time, on the monitor, it said news bulletin. So I knew to stop talking. And the news bulletin was from Bob Welch, who was on the scene photographing the parade, that there was an incident during the parade and the motorcade sped off. And he said, "Sounds resembling shots were heard, and we'll have more for you as soon as we can get it." So anyway, that set off every little bit. They were breaking into my program. And they would say to me, "Bobbie, we're coming back to you, pick up where you left off." So fortunately, Ray McKinley kept his wits about him. And in a situation like that, when you're the on-air person, you just do what they tell you to do. Pick up where you left off and go on, and that's what you do. So it was like that through Ray McKinley and through the second guest, and then we sent it up to the network. And by the last time I came on the air, before we went to the NBC network, the announcement was that the last rites of the Catholic Church had been given to President Kennedy. And so then it came back to me. And I said, we mustn't read too much into that. Anytime there is any kind of an unknown circumstance, it's proper for Catholics. I'm Catholic. It's proper to receive the last rites of the Roman Catholic Church. So we signed off, went to the network, and at 1:07, it was officially proclaimed that President John F. Kennedy was dead. Some of my favorite legends I have to mention: Bette Davis and Olivia de Havilland. I interviewed Bette Davis and Olivia de Havilland together when they came to Dallas, and that was interesting because Bette Davis came in. It was a morning interview. I took it she was not a morning person, and she was very nicely attired, and but Olivia comes in, and she was, always very fond of French couture, and I know it was a French designed outfit she had on, and she was so charming. She said, "Oh, we hear such nice things about you, and that you're such a good interviewer." But the whole time she's looking at the camera set up at the other end of the room, and she says, "If you'll excuse me a moment," and so Bette Davis and I sit down. And right away, Bette Davis whips out a cigarette and says, "Is there any coffee?" And Olivia's down at the other end working over the camera operator. And so I would look down that way occasionally, and there would be, moving this and moving that, and bringing lights down and so forth. And finally, she completely reset the whole stage down there. So she comes back, she says, "Miss Davis, well, you've been talking to our hostess here." She said, "I've been working with the cameraman." And she said, "Would you like to come and give your okay to everything?" Bette Davis said, "Livy, darling," she said, "in all the years I've been doing this kind of thing, I always have the same makeup and same hair, and nothing hurts and nothing helps." And that was her answer. So we go down, we get ready to sit down, and Olivia says, "Miss Davis," she said, "you'll be on that side, and Miss Wygant, you'll be on this side." It was a little settee-like thing, and she was in the middle. So, okay, now we do the interview. I go back to the studio, and when it was on film, and when it came out of the lab, I took a look. We were all gathered around looking at it, and as soon as the 3-shot came up, I just burst into laughing, and they're saying, "Why?" I'll tell you later. So I told them the story, because here we were, Bette Davis on one end, me on the other, Olivia in the middle. Bette Davis and I are looking like Godzilla, but Olivia was younger than springtime beautiful. Then another time I interviewed Bette Davis, the legend, by herself, and it was a press conference ahead of me. We were set up by ourselves at the other end. So when the press conference was over, and she moved down to be with me, a lot of the press photographers followed. And so Bette Davis sits down, and she sees them, and she says, "1 minute, and then you all have to leave for the TV interview to continue." So one guy had an especially long lens. "You there with the long lens, no nostril shots." So whenever anybody looks like they're getting too close, I say, no nostril shots. Whenever you mention Channel 5 television, WBAP, to anybody who's over 40 maybe, they remember Harold Taft. He was our chief meteorologist for many years. Uh, he was the father of television meteorology. He wrote the book, and that's not just for our station or our area. It was for anybody and everybody doing television meteorology. Harold set the standards for that. He was, he was a colonel in the reserves, and so he, people would call him the Colonel or Colonel Taft. But I used to tease him all the time. I said, Harold, I have more seniority here than you do. I went to work 2 weeks before you started. And so we were the best of friends. We hosted the Jerry Lewis Labor Day Telethon. I did it for 16 years. I think he may have gone on for a couple of years more than that. But when I'd be working late at night, which was often, and I'd be in my little office, and I'd be working away on a script or something, and Harold would come and stand in the doorway. And he stood in the doorway, not because he didn't want to come in, but he had to listen for his phone down the hallway in case it rang. He would, go down and answer his phone. But he used to stand in the doorway, and he'd tell me what the suits upstairs are doing. And it was always, some ridiculous thing that the management upstairs wanted him to do or wanted to change and all. And he didn't have anybody else to confide in. So we were very tight and very dear friends. I still miss him to this day. For years, people kept saying to me, you've got to write a book, you've got to write a book. Well, when you're working 18 out of 24 hours, you don't have much time to write a book. But I'm such a squirrel, I just kept things, interviews, and a lot of what I did went into Channel 5 archives, but a lot of what I did on the press trips when we would travel LA, New York, even abroad. We went to Germany and Italy and London many times. I would keep all that stuff. And thank goodness into my life came Eric Clapp, and he was still at UT Arlington. But they said to him, they assigned him as an intern to me, and they said to him, see all that mess around Bobbie's desk? It's your job to clean that up. And so he set up a little place down in the basement where all this stuff was in boxes, and started organizing it. And he is my archivist today. They're in the process of digitizing it on YouTube. If you go to YouTube, the Bobbie Wygant archive, you will see many of the interviews that we're talking about today. And it's just wonderful. And his assistant, Mitch Winberg, is just, they're together. They're just doing a fantastic job. Worth your time and a look-see. But anyway, getting back to the book, people kept saying, you should write a book, you should write a book. So I kept journals, yearly journals. Every day it was an entry, just a couple of words maybe of what I did that day. The way I kept saying, I don't know anything about the publishing business, and I knew I should, but, I was too busy. Fortunately, the person who is the photographic editor of my book, Talking to the Stars is the name of the book, met up with the editor of TCU Press. And they got to talking, and next thing I knew, Christina Petoskey, my dear friend and the photographic editor of the book, calls and says, "I've got a book deal for you. They want to talk to us at TCU Press." I thought, a nice little book, ordinary book with some pictures scattered throughout. And after the first meeting, they get back to me, and suddenly we're doing a coffee table book. And we had submitted several hundred pictures, and they wanted more pictures. I said, "Christina, the book is going to weigh a ton. They'll need a cart to get it out of the bookstore." But anyway, that's the story behind the book. What I'm so proud of, and I just went along for the ride and did the writing, but what I'm so proud of is that people tell me all the time it makes a wonderful gift because there's something in it for everybody. It tells the history of Channel 5. It tells my times talking with stars, many star stories, and a lot of behind the scenes talk, and it's in chapters. There's a chapter about the Beatles, a chapter about John F. Kennedy, November 22nd, 1963. You can pick up any part of it and read it and put it down. You don't have to go cover to cover, page after page. So I'm thrilled with the book. I'm very proud of it, and I hope that that many of you will be interested in taking a look at it as well. My dream interview can never be. My dream interview would be Winston Churchill. Now, that may surprise you. But remember now, I grew up during World War II. And the way we got our news pictorially was at the movie house when Fox Movietone News or something would come on. And I tried to go to the movies almost every week. And I just became a big fan of Winston Churchill. And I was just flabbergasted at everything about Winston Churchill. He did, though, I have to say that I somewhat identified him with my granddad. They had some of the same qualities. My granddad ran the post office at Lafayette, Indiana. And, he could tell you how the cow ate the cabbage if he had to. And I loved that about Winston Churchill. He didn't mince words. But anyway, as time went on, I started gathering books, and I have a library of Churchill books you wouldn't believe. But if I could have interviewed Winston Churchill, I wouldn't so much have talked about the war and all that kind of stuff. He was a beautiful painter. I went to his house in Chartwell, England, once when I was there doing work, and it was like a pilgrimage, and it was like being in some wonderful museum or cathedral or something, and touching his desk and seeing all these things and many Churchill paintings. And I was just I was misty-eyed the whole time I was going through it. It was just such a wonderful experience. So I would have talked with him about his art and about his dear wife. They were so dedicated to one another, and his home life, and it would have been that kind of an interview. I didn't get to interview Churchill, but I did meet and talk with. I didn't actually get to do an interview, but I had 2 meetings with Celia Sandys, the granddaughter of Winston Churchill, and she wrote a book about her grandfather. And once I met her and talked with her in Dallas, and then I had tea with her in London one time. And she was so down to earth, and she loved her granddad like I loved my granddad Connolly. And so that's as close as I ever got to Churchill. But he will always live in my memory. I tell you, my role models were Bob Hope and George Burns. You know, they both worked. They both lived to be 100, and they both worked until the last year or two of their lives. And I mean, they were out there, you know, doing it. So they were my role models. I thought I'm going to. But here's what I noted about both of them, is that they didn't just get in a rut and insist on staying there. As times change, and particularly television, look at all the changes that television has gone through. You have to be flexible. You have to, you know, forget yesterday and move on to today and tomorrow. So I was always willing to do that, and enjoyed doing it. Actually, I never got too married to what I was doing, and the new technology and the things you could do with it, exciting. I found that just wonderful. So I would say don't get too locked into your little comfort zone. You know, go with the times, and just, as I say, just keep on keeping on. That's what I've done for over 70 years. We probably used up more than our allotted time, but this has been fun for me. I hope it has been for you. You know, laughing at some of these remembrances and being sad at some of the other things that come into a reporter's life. But I've loved being with you, and I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have.